It's the last day of January in January 31st, 2025, and we are sheltering in the bottom of one of Oman's most beautiful wadis, Wadi Darbat, but not in the sort of more accessible tourist end, in the fairly inaccessible northern end. The first bats are flying around. There's a beautiful crescent moon upside down just above the horizon. I don't think we're going to have it for long. And there's a lovely soft glow. The horizon is one of wooded hills, low wooded hills all around me, and immediately in front of me is a gravel wadi bed, a dry riverbed that we've been in and out of today, which I will explain as this podcast goes on. But like Thomas, we are now just one day away from Salalah, when he was here in 1928, having set off in December 1927 from Muscat to Asaway. When he was here, he was obviously now pretty excited. He had caught a glimpse of the Indian Ocean, but was yet to dip his toe in it, and like us, is one day away from his journey end in Salalah. So it was very appropriate that as we sat around the campfire last night, we got his diary out and read what he did on his final few days, and he was very keen to explore this wadi called Wadi Darbat, because here in Wadi Darbat, when the Kharif flows, when the monsoon flows, what is a dry river valley today turns into a raging torrent that reaches a vertical precipice, which Thomas referred to as an abyss. And certainly if you go onto YouTube and if you Google Wadi Darbat waterfall in Oman, watch that in full flow. There's some incredible energy flowing over that waterfall during the monsoon. So Thomas was very keen to see this abyss, and that was our aim today. Today will be our last walking day. Tomorrow we have to drive along the coast. We have to descend to a place called Taka, which is where Thomas went, and from there he rode his camels along the coastal plain to Salalah, and we will drive our Land Rover camels along that plain, because tomorrow evening we have a grand event thrown in our honour by the governor of Dhofar, His Excellency Said Marwan. So we need to get ourselves scrubbed up for that. We've got to prepare a bit of a presentation to share the story with all of the guests who will be coming tomorrow to that event. But last night was it was a beautifully calm sunset, beautiful orange glow. I think if you listened to the podcast yesterday, everything was good, but sadly during the night the wind got up, and it was a really cool, quite a strong gusting breeze, and camp chairs were flying, the vehicles were rocking. It was a pretty unpleasant night. No one slept particularly well, but we all got up and cracked on this morning, got the porridge on the go about 7 o'clock, and by 8:45 everything was loaded and we were heading for the target of today. But one of the last things we did before we left the campsite was to go up the slope and collect the camera trap and check what, if anything, had been caught. And there's a real art to putting out camera traps. I'm not particularly good at it, but I just try and put myself into the mind of the animal, and where would I walk if I were that particular animal in this particular landscape. And I spotted up the hill a nice sort of low vertical wall of rock, which ran horizontal. It was vertical for about 3 meters, but then ran horizontally across the hillside. And I just figured that any animal walking on that hillside would probably follow the base of that rock face, and so that's where I put. Someone donated us a load of cooked lamb yesterday, including the skull and various ribs. So that we didn't eat was deposited in front of the camera trap. I taped the camera trap to a tree trunk, and then went up this morning first thing to retrieve that. And it was really, really exciting, because as you will have seen if you've been following our social media, we've been feeding foxes in Oman since day one, really. There seem to be foxes everywhere. In the desert, lots of gerbils and jerds. We've had a bat or two, we've had cats, but last night we caught on camera a beautiful Arabian wolf, which is something I've wanted to see for years. Of course, I've seen them on TV, but I wanted to see one fairly close too. So it was really interesting that we were sleeping out on our mattresses under the stars on the ground last night, and there was a lovely Arabian wolf walking no more than 100 metres away, chomping on a sheep's skull that we'd left out for him. So a beautiful animal. I was pretty sure it was a wolf. I sent it out to some good friends, Hardy Hikmani and Andrew Spalton and Khalid Hikmani, Hardy's brother, and they all came back and confirmed, absolutely, yep, Arabian wolf. So if you want to see a picture of an Arabian wolf, go on to our Instagram page, Jewel of Arabia Expedition, and you'll be able to see the images we captured last night on the camera trap. So that got a spring in our step, and at this stage of the game then, Thomas was determined to try and find this precipice, this waterfall that previous explorers who'd landed on the coast and travelled inland had described to him. And so I'm just reading from his diary now. The landscape was full of natural caves, and above where I stood were rolling yellow meadowlands with cows everywhere grazing, and an occasional clump of trees almost suggestive of an English scene. And that's exactly how it appears. His way of describing things is perfect. Low driving clouds prevented us from seeing Taka, our destination, that night, but we got glimpses of the Indian Ocean beyond and the lofty blue range of Jebel Samhan to our left. Descending, we reached Shahait, a small village perched high on the hills, and from here I was anxious to see the abyss which Bent, a previous explorer, had identified with Abyssopolis. And so I was conducted by the locals, the camels having been sent round by another way to the foot of the precipice. Descending steeply, we halted 300 feet above the gorge of Wadi Darbat, here a perennial stream. The spectacle is of great beauty. In every direction are mountain slopes thickly wooded, and below the stream flows towards the abyss. We clambered down the hillside to this stream where the Bents had penetrated from the coast some 30-odd years before. Thence I crawled to the edge of the abyss, a precipice about a mile in width, its eastern end marked by a delightful cascade, and peered down its precipitous face some 500 feet below. Descending by a flanking slope, we followed its winding bed to its mouth, Khor Rori. The ruins here are probably the site of an ancient frankincense port, and he was, of course, absolutely right. Khor Rori is a most extraordinary place. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site now, maintained by Oman's Ministry of Heritage and Tourism, and what an incredible job they have done. I was probably last there about 15 years ago, and it's been transformed really, and clearly it was a place of huge significance. And one thing we've been able to do on this journey is to follow the frankincense trail, and it was only a couple of days ago when we were in Wadi Darbat that Nigel and the team were able to experience how to harvest incense from the frankincense trees by some of the local skilled artisans there. So we followed it from cutting and scraping and peeling off the hardened resin to today descending down to the sea at Khor Rori, which is now a UNESCO heritage site, and it was here where the frankincense was stored in little warehouses in what was clearly at one time a large bustling community. And between two headlands, if you look out to sea, so Khor Rori is built on the banks of what is now the dry riverbed, but actually over the years between the two headlands a sandbar has formed which has blocked the flow of water to the sea. So you have this beautiful lagoon now below Khor Rori, where we saw an osprey fishing as we walked all around the site. But in the olden days, before that sandbar blocked the access to the sea, the dhows would sail in from the Indian Ocean. They would moor alongside Khor Rori, and they would take on their load of frankincense and carry it around the world to the great markets of India and Egypt and north to Damascus and Iraq. So it was lovely to follow the frankincense trail really over the last few weeks, from production to the point of export. So we wanted to follow Thomas's route today by descending those steep wooded slopes down into the bottom of Wadi Darbat and walking to the edge of the abyss. And we did it, but boy, it was much harder than we anticipated. We'd used some satellite imagery from Google Earth, but really in such steep terrain you have to use Google Earth with great caution. We did find a way down, but it took us much longer. It was a much slower journey. I think by the time we'd sort of walked and sort of tunnelled our way through the thick undergrowth, much of which was pretty thorny. Our arms were cut and my shirt ripped in several places. My hat was yanked off my head by thorn bushes, and we had to do a bit of scrambling and rock climbing down a dry tributary stream into the bottom of the gorge, and what we thought would take us a relatively short time ended up taking us 2.5 to 3 hours. But when we got to the bottom, what a beautiful sight, just like Thomas describes. Standing lakes of water, azure blue, full of fish, herons, white egrets. There were green sandpipers, common sandpipers, hoopoes, and just beautiful bird life, plant life. Some of the biggest fig trees I've ever seen anywhere. Just a place of absolute beauty. And slightly concerned because we were running a little bit late. Nigel and Ibrahim kindly walked up the valley to meet us. They had to drive all the way around in the vehicles, and they walked up with a bit of water. And all's well, all sort of ended well. And we're now all fully fed at lunchtime, and we've retreated back up the mountain. We're at an altitude of about 1,800 feet above sea level, and hopefully it'll be relatively cool. And we've chosen this place to camp tonight simply because of the adventures of last night, and in the hope that it'll be slightly calmer here, shaded amongst the trees. But we'll see. So I've just been out. I've put out the camera trap for tonight. I've got a kind of different location to last night. Whatever animal comes bumbling along tonight, there will be no sheep's head or ribs. It's a leftover tin of corned beef and a couple of tins of tuna as bait, and we'll see what we get. So if you're interested in the wildlife, just go onto our social media tomorrow and you'll see what we catch tonight. And one of the things I don't think we will catch for sure, but one of the things that makes this landscape so special is the presence of the Arabian leopard. We are very much in Arabian wolf country, we're in striped hyena country, porcupine, honey badgers, and also the Arabian leopard. And in Oman, there are 3 people who are the experts on the Arabian leopard. I've already mentioned them in this podcast. Brothers Hadi and Khalid Hikmani, who live here in Dhofar. In fact, we camped not far from their house last night. The Arabian wolf was probably about 1 kilometre from their house. And Hadi and Khalid were mentored by the incredible man Andrew Spalton. And all 3 are now working on a program to reintroduce the Arabian leopard into Saudi Arabia. I think Andrew has been doing lots of camera trapping in the south of Saudi Arabia in the hope to find evidence of Arabian leopard still existing, but they found none. So there's a real concerted effort to reintroduce this magnificent animal and give it a chance to establish a foothold in Saudi Arabia. There are supposedly a population of between 48 to 54, I think, if I remember what Andrew told me, which they're only found here in these mountains where I sit right now, the Dhofar mountains. It's a stable population, but obviously with that number it's vulnerable and it's genetically very isolated. There's nothing going to come from the north because of the huge empty quarter desert. There's nothing going to come from the east because of the gravel plains and the oil fields. But next door, of course, to us here, only less than 100 kilometres to the west is the border with Yemen. And when I kayak along the coast here from Salalah to the border with Yemen, it's the headlands coming down into the sea, steeply down into the sea, are covered in the same frankincense and fig forest that we have here in Oman. So there are undoubtedly leopards in Yemen, but with the situation being what it is, leopard research is perhaps not a priority there, but certainly one would expect there to be a reasonable population of leopards just across the border in Yemen with which the Omani population would interact. And I know there are plans now to bring a group of people involved in leopard research together in Oman, using Oman as a training ground to train rangers in how to camera trap and look for leopards, so that assessments can be done in Yemen and to help the reintroduction program in Saudi Arabia. So the leopards are beautiful, beautiful animals. I've never seen one here in Oman. I've seen one in Tanzania, up in the mountains on Oldonyo Lengai, a lovely old volcano in the Rift Valley. But it'd be really special to see one here. I don't think we will, but let's see what tonight brings, what the camera trap reveals in the morning, and listen to the podcast tomorrow, and we'll tell you all about it, and look at the social media tomorrow as well.